privately put in the back of my head that this was turning out to be a supernatural issue here. Now, maybe this was an old Indian burial ground, right? Maybe this was a Native American that was, ticked off at me that I was up there. And maybe this was a lesson, I could have looked at it as an innuendo more so than actual phenomena. But when I turned around after this mysterious thing or person or Sasquatch, whatever, was not there, but was letting me know it was nearby. I was heading back towards my Jeep, and I looked down at my feet, and there was this freshly pinched in half mole that was bisected and bleeding at my feet.
Wow.
It was gushing blood as I turned around, as though something, had pinched it in half right in front of me. And I was.
Now, do you think that was like a warning, Toby, to basically get out of there?
Well, at this point, I'd been hanging with some pretty interesting people. I knew Ron Moorhead at that point. I knew Tom Powell at that point. I knew Henry Franzoni at that point. I knew Kirk Sigurdsson at that point. These are all people that are way out in the left field as far as the Bigfoot community is concerned. And I could see why. I mean, they've got some really crazy theories about what's going on. But they basically said, I don't care what people think. I mean, they're lying to you. You'll find out sooner or later. And that was kind of my half-ass attempt at doing a Tom Powell impression. But anyway, I remember seeing that whole thing unfold, and it didn't scare me enough to not send me back up that mountain further. In fact, it amped up the adrenal response that this was an amazing mystery. It would have been a really awesome mystery for it just to be a giant mountain monkey hybrid. That'd be totally cool, But this was turning into a legitimate like Scooby-Doo episode, and so I immersed myself deeper, and then that's when I'll just fast forward a little bit for the sake of time. But I remember there came a moment when my tent was picked up off the ground in broad daylight and moved 49 feet at an angle, and then stuck into a tree that was in the same location. I remember the point when I saw the giant white lights that were about 50 feet in diameter explode in front of me in the darkened woods in front of the trees, and then stair step down to the forest floor. I remember going back 2 weeks later to confirm that the lights were up there with a friend who was a witness, and the lights exploded in the rain in front of us in the same spot. I remember seeing the stick structures stuck into the ground that were ornately crafted together twigs with pitch and mud, making these really beautiful, Native American looking, primal looking stick structures wedged down into the stair steps. I remember going to collect a scat sample in the backyard near the John Deere tractor, where this was human-sized scat and two 15-inch footprints were next to this human-looking scat that Kathy Strain said was absolutely worth collecting. It had deer hair in it. It had bone in it.
I'll put it this way: I don't think it would be the guy from eating a McDonald's, or maybe it could be. I don't know.
Well,
with the hair and bone
yeah.
in it, I'm not sure. McDonald's, please don't sue me. I can't afford it. But it just
Yeah.
like you're saying. Ron was saying last night or the night before that when he was out in the campment where they were at, they would hear like strange noises, like a car door slam out 8 miles out deep in the woods. At night. Kind of weird sounds that no way to account for it.
I'm glad you brought up the car door slams, because I brought that up last year when that happened to us. I was out with a buddy of mine, Chris Manier, and we were in an area out towards where the no-tie prints were found by Cliff Barrickman and him. And I was standing in the woods while Chris was walking around with his FLIR, and about less than 10 feet behind me was the sound of a car door slamming. And it was such a specific car door slam that it sounded like the back of like a minivan, kind of with even the rail sliding. and the sound of like the rubber gasket meeting the other side of the metal flange, and then the sound of I mean, all this happened in an instant, but you have all these memories, of sounds throughout the years. This was a very specific car door slamming sound in the middle of the woods. And so this is, this phenomena of whatever this mimicry is, or the stone tape theory. I don't know, but the documentation of sounds that don't belong in the woods goes much beyond, much farther, far beyond than a car door slam. I mean, we're talking about Sally Shepherd Welford talking about an Ording with Otto Williams, the sound of underground drilling. You hear machine sounds coming out of underneath tree roots. This has been happening ever since the Bigfoot phenomena happened, and all these Bigfooters know this. I mean, this is stuff they don't talk about because it just ruins their game. But no, the crazy sounds in the woods is something that someone should do a PowerPoint on this at one of these Sasquatch meetings.
Oh yeah,
this is a phenomenal thing, right? You should not be hearing the sound of a weed whacker when you're out 30 miles off trail. You just shouldn't hear the weed whacker. And but these are the sounds that you hear.
Now, do you think they're doing it to both vocally, or do you think they're transmitting it to your brain, that those noises, just to play with you?
Yeah, it's all playing with you. No one's ever seen a Sasquatch hardly even vocalize, let alone do an imitation. I mean, I've never seen any really good video of Bigfoot anyway. But as far as there being any evidence that they're vocalizing, it's very lacking. So who knows what they're doing with the whoops and the knocks? I mean, Tom Powell will tell you that they're clapping their leathery hands together, making a wood knocking sound. But, the stories just go on and on about the mind games that are played out in the woods. We could talk a lot about the trickster element that the Native Americans attribute to what Sasquatch does, and maybe that's true, but if you're looking into the vocal range of what a Sasquatch can do, you have to go back to Ron's sounds in the Sierras, because their ability to use their voice box is so fluctuating, so complicated, but on a waveform, on a spectrograph, and I hope somebody's listening that knows waveform and things like working with the spectrograph more so than me. But the Sasquatch vocalization pattern on a waveform, when you're looking at the actual waveform, is not so complicated looking. In fact, it kind of looks like a tic-tac, or a submarine, as where ours is just kind of like mountain peaks and layers of mountain peaks, like the substrate of the land or the sea, just layers high. But a Sasquatch goes horizontal, kind of in chunks. So as complicated as they sound, there is something very weird about the fact that you can't see the complication.
Well, I don't know. And on top of it, Ron was mentioning too that the rock throwing, I guess like in the morning they went and checked a tree where a rock hit, and it even took the bark off. So, I mean, whatever these creatures or whatever they are, they must have a lot of power behind them. They must. And I think, from talking to other guests and stuff, I think they really, how can I say it? I don't think they're not unfriendly, but I don't think they're friendly. And I think they're basically trying to tell you to leave, leave us alone. Just leave.
Yeah, unless you're a long-term witness. And then there's this issue of how long-term witnesses befriend these things. One of the most warming stories is Julie Scott's novel out from Harstine Island, where Rich Germu investigated, I believe, at the Olympic Project. He'll be speaking, I think, on August 5th with Ron at the Point Casino. There's a quick little plug for that event. But the story of Harstine Island tells the story of Julie Scott's family moving into a rental. And I believe it was her husband, and her daughter began to have Sasquatch come up to the edge of the property, especially at night, a family unit. And they got so unnerved by it, or, for one reason or another, they ended up moving, I think, less than a couple of years. And on the day that they left, they had kind of this relationship that was growing, but now was ending. And there comes a point in the story, I believe it's oh, someone help me with the name of this book. I think it's like Friends of the Forest or The Forest People and something like that. But anyway, as they're loading up the U-Haul truck, getting ready to leave this rental, they hear sobbing out in the woods from these Sasquatch that are mourning the loss of this family. But that story doesn't end there. After they left, they moved far away, and they had a new tribe, a new clan, a new group of Sasquatch find them. And it wasn't the same ones because they were on an island, but the Bigfoot issue did not leave them. And they went on to say that the Bigfoot that they have now, and I believe they still have issues where they live, look way more Native American, much more human. And so that's usually something attributed to the East Coast Sasquatch phenomena. Ours are much more, we grow everything bigger and I guess badder out here in the woods. But yeah, they said they look very Native American.
Well, Ron was saying too, that I sat and talked to elders with a couple of tribes up here. And, they explain their dealings going back generations and generations with Bigfoot. And, basically, even what Ron was saying, they would like kidnap the squaws, for example, and, mate maybe with them and stuff like that. So, the breeding could have, done some genetics changing, on them, where they were, crossed between human and what they are. The other thing that was interesting when I sat there with the elders, and I sat and talked to two different tribes, because some of my family members are Muckleshoot and another tribe up here. And they got me, together to talk to the medicine woman and some of the elders. And they also talked about the Bigfoot going back. Also had a tendency, like the squaws, would, for example, be doing their laundry, washing their laundry, I should say, in a river, and they would be kidnapped, by the Bigfoot. And then, they would go looking for them, and then they would find, like, the bones and stuff like that, left. So also they were saying that both, the Bigfoot, besides, breeding with, the humans, also, kind of maybe enjoyed like eating them. But I guess maybe again too, it's like we like eating deer and we like eating bear, and again, people say that, oh, I met a Bigfoot ran across when it was friendly. Well, maybe it could be. I mean, like you were pointing out, depending on where you live, all different type of, just like you have a dog. You might have a dog that loves everybody. Then you have a dog that wants to tear everybody's, right off.
Right. If you have a dog that's abused for over a period of years, and then suddenly you send a child in to see that dog, even if it's a puppy, that puppy could be ferocious. That little tiny Cocker Spaniel could just have a bad temper because he's just been so, programmed by beaten down by humans that he just smells what he smells, sees what he sees, and that, that toddler gets spanked by the puppy. So, you don't know the experiences of what these things have gone through, but you can't be in the mind of, the Sasquatch. At least I can't. Some people claim they can, but, some people are just completely horrified to think that these things may have a temper to the point where they would take somebody and eat them, and, the missing people phenomena. But,
I don't know. I got to step in because, I talked about the other night with Ron about my experience.
Yeah.
But, again, me and my friend, we went up to the Canadian Rockies, early 2000s. We were taking pictures of like old silver mines, old, cemeteries. We went up to an old Japanese internment camp, which had a mine there. I was getting ready to take pictures, and there was an old building structure. It was still somewhat left, and I was taking pictures of that. And my friend says, "Hey, look over there. That's a huge bear." And he goes, "Why don't you put your telephoto on?" And so I slap my lens on there, and I look at it, and I tell my friend, "Hey," I said, let's get the blankety blank out of here. And he goes, "What?" I said, "That is not a bear." And about right when I said that, that's when it noticed us.
Right.
And it put out the loudest scream, and it probably echoed because being where the old mine was there, the mountainside there and all that stuff out there, it really echoed loud. I was never so scared of my life. We took off running, and the last thing I saw, it was running behind us. Okay.